Еще раз приветствую всех участников нашей конференции. Мы продолжаем, и следующий наш спикер Саймон Риндл, наш участник из Великобритании. Он является основателем и директором компании Advanced Product Delivery, и более 20 лет он помогает людям познавать новые технологии и применять новые подходы для того, чтобы нести бизнес-ценность своим клиентам. В сегодняшнем докладе будет речь о 7 хороших привычках компании, которыми должны обзавестись, для того, чтобы их трансформации были не поверхностными и не превратились просто в переименовывание текущих процессов в модные названия, а были реальными, глубокими и несущими действительно пользу компании и ценность ее клиентам. Hi, Simon. Nice to see you. So I've introduced you to our participants, and we are looking forward to hearing these seven good habits that enterprises should acquire in order to be sure that they have successful but true transformations. Are you ready?
Yes,
Вы готовы? Да, я готов.
Okay, great.
Отлично.
Good afternoon.
Добрый день.
I'd like to share these 7
Я
habits
хочу
that
поделиться с
I
вами
have
7 привычками,
successful
которые
Agile
я наблюдал,
transformations.
помогают в Agile трансформации.
Companies that adopt these habits
Завести
build a
себе эти
sustainable
привычки позволит
Agile
вам
transformation
построить устойчивый
as
процесс
opposed to
трансформации,
investing a lot of time, effort
вместо
and
того,
money
чтобы тратить огромное
and
количество
then
времени, усилий
seeing
и
that
денег,
transformation
и
become undone
потом замечать, что ваша
within a year
трансформация — это просто
that all the
переименование,
coaches and consultants leave.
когда уходят все коучи и консультанты.
So, in my opinion, these
По-моему,
habits
эти
are in
привычки
priority order.
построены в правильном порядке. Список привычек в правильном порядке.
The first priority is to communicate.
Главный ваш приоритет — это доносить вашу цель.
This purpose needs to come from the chief executive
Цель
or the
должна
highest level.
транслироваться самым высоким руководителем, который может
Challenge
быть.
is if everybody
Очень
cannot
сложно,
clearly
если
state the reason to
все
adopt
люди
new
не
practices
могут
and
четко
patterns of
назвать
behavior.
причину, почему мы совершаем этот
The
переход.
culture will not change.
Тогда культура вашей компании не изменится.
If there is not support from the very top
Если
of the
нет
organization,
поддержки от верхушки вашей
the move
организации,
to adopting agile patterns and practices
процесс
will be lost
адаптирования
within
agile,
the many
паттернов
other
и
agendas
процессов
of the organization.
не произойдет успешно. И на других уровнях организации тоже.
One of the best examples I've
Один из
seen
лучших примеров,
was
который я
from an oil
видел,
and gas company
было
where the
в
chief
нефтяной
executive
компании, где
highlighted
CEO
that the need to move
подчеркивал,
to agility was
что
essential
ключ
for the
к их
survival and
успеха
growth of the business.
и роста — это переход на Agile.
It was a short, clear
Это
purpose
был
that the move to
очень
agility
короткая,
was happening,
четкая цель, поставленная им перед всеми.
and it was communicated
И он ее
throughout the whole
донес
business so that there was
всем
no chance
сотрудникам,
of anybody not
так что не
understanding
было ни одного
or
уровня
appreciating
организации,
the
на
importance
котором люди
of
бы не
this
понимали
agenda.
или не оценивали эту цель так,
This
как он.
helped people
Это
align on
помогло
budget,
людям
align on the work to be
объединиться
done,
в
and also
процессе,
understand how
заняться
much
работой совместно, понять,
latitude and freedom they had in order
насколько
to achieve this change.
свободы у них есть в новых обстоятельствах.
This enabled the incremental growth of the
Это
agility
позволило
culture
компании
year on
очень
year
быстро
to
вырасти
support
в
a
течение года
self-sustaining model
и
so that
создать
the
модель, которая была
external support
устойчивой.
could diminish because the
Так что
organization itself
после этого
had
столько
embodied the
поддержки
purpose.
уже было не нужно, потому что организация вся уже перестроилась к этому моменту.
On the reverse side,
С другой
I've
стороны,
seen many financial organizations
многие финансовые организации
start multiple times to move into
тратят очень
agility.
много времени, многократно пробуют перейти на Agile.
When the importance of this adoption of the culture was not communicated well,
Когда важность перехода на новую культуру
you
не доносится
saw
до
many false
сотрудников,
starts.
Получается фальш-старт.
where the movement to agility was seen to
И
be yet
измени-
another minor thing to do during the year. And it resulted in many stop-starts to it. And a couple of the organizations, the whole idea of agility became overloaded, and the terms like Agile, Scrum, and Kanban all became toxic, where you couldn't reuse those terms. This hesitant adoption creates confusion in the organization and a duck and cover approach, where people will say, oh, look, if I just hide, this nonsense will go away in a little while. So it's really important that the purpose is communicated regularly and clearly to give everybody in the organization that common understanding of the intent and the importance of moving. So this is the first habit. And the reason I say it's a habit is to change into these will require constant effort and attention. The second habit is to build feedback loops. These feedback loops need to go within the business and to your consumer or customer. When we're building the feedback loops, we want to shorten that feedback loop as much as possible. Feedback is a gift. How many times do we have to sit in meetings where we're spending all our time trying to collect the data? When we have good working feedback loops, the data is freely available and is objective and clear. There's no agenda or politics associated with the information. This then enables the people with the data to make the best possible decision. When you make the decision, there is a chance it could be good or it could be bad. It might take you towards your vision or it might detract from that. In which case, if your feedback loop is short enough, you will be able to correct it and get yourself back on track. The fastest information in an organization should be the bad news. We cannot avoid bad news or unforeseen circumstances in business. And for that reason, we need to be able to build the information flow in our organization to be fast and effective, to enable us to be able to react to any untoward situation, and also when something positive is happening, to be able to capitalize on it and to move even faster into an area of growth or innovation. These feedback loops need to extend to our customers. We need to make it easy for them to communicate to us what they're missing, what they want. If we can identify the gap in the market and the areas for growth, our customers are the best people to advise us. Shortening not only the time to market, but the time to learn to get our product into the market, to get some feedback from our customer and bring that back into our organization and act on it is critical for us to build the agility within the organization. The third habit is to forge a common vocabulary. I'm sure many of you have seen this cartoon of two people looking at a number. One says 6, one says 9. Language matters. The words we use shape our thoughts, and our thoughts shape our deeds. A client I was working with, we're doing a DevOps project, and I was helping them incorporate the processes and practices to help them get faster throughput through their organization. I was on a call with the head of engineering, the project manager of one of the projects, the lead developer of a project, and myself. We're having this call, and it went for about 30 minutes when I realized that the point of confusion on the call was the way they were using the word sprint. As a professional Scrum trainer, a sprint is a clear time box to deliver a done increment. They were using the word sprint, meaning 2 weeks. They were effectively using shorter waterfalls. So there was a 2-week analysis sprint, a 2-week design sprint, a 2-week build sprint, a 2-week test sprint, and then 2-week recovery sprint. The challenge that they were suffering was that their feedback loops were broken because the time to test and get the feedback to the development team often caused that delay of understanding where the dev team had moved on. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, that you then create a longer and longer cycle to build. This confusion was caused by not having a clear understanding of certain keywords. I then went on to work with that organization, and we standardized the vocabulary around common guides. So we used the Scrum Guide for Scrum, and we standardized on that language so that the word sprint meant a Scrum team building a done increment. Not only did this help them build a regular feedback loop for their product, but it also helped reduce the confusion that was happening in all their discussions and their meetings. A less successful option that I've seen, a number of larger organizations will often have multiple vendors coming in and helping them with their agile transformations. If that organization doesn't standardize on definitions of certain reserved words or vocabulary, it will cause confusion to the teams, as each coach can explain things from their particular perspective using their language. This ends up creating a lot of confusion because a team will hear one thing from one coach and another thing from another, and then that creates this confusion when the two teams talk to each other. It's not about being dogmatic, it's about being clear. And whilst as a professional Scrum trainer, I would encourage people to use the Scrum Guide, it doesn't really matter as long as your vocabulary is clear, which frameworks you're using, which words are the reserved words and can't be changed, and which are the boundaries where there's flexibility. Using this vocabulary as a habit will encourage a precision and a focus to ensure that the teams deliver effectively. The fourth habit is balancing outcomes and output. In recent times, a lot of the people in the user experience community will argue for outcomes over output. I argue it must be a balance. For our businesses to sustain, we must deliver our product to the market to get feedback so that we can get that financial growth. We must achieve output so that we can get something to the market, so that we can find out whether our intent is correct or not, and whether we're getting the feedback from the market, whether our product's delivering the value we think it should. When we deliver our product to the market, we can then find out whether we're achieving the business outcomes that we intended to by having outcome-based assessments, OKRs, or metrics based on that. If our organization fails to deliver, we will lose the confidence of our stakeholders, we'll lose the confidence within the market. So we must achieve output. Balancing the effectiveness of our output so that we can address technological issues, so that we can increase our technical competency in our product, as well as the rigor of our business domain, will help us be more effective in delivering our outcomes. So this is not the focus on output or utilization so that we're just putting whatever we like into the market. We're aiming to put the most valuable, high quality increment that we can. This is also critical when we're working in high risk industries and industries that are highly regulated. Having worked in oil and gas, defense, pharmaceutical, insurance, finance, all of these industries have a rigor of compliance and governance built around them, and that has to be baked in. Helping people understand that done is one of the most essential and critical aspects of delivery is very, very important. This will help reduce operational costs, support tickets, and enable us to achieve a higher degree of outcome. Your specific context will help you guide the balance between throughput and risk management. You need to be in that state of done so that you can balance that output and outcome, because without one, you won't have the other. The fifth habit is to encourage empowerment at all levels. This can be particularly tricky because many organizations moving to agility are moving from a very classic, predictive, hierarchical base of control. People at lower levels of the organization are expected to do what they're told. We're trying to create this space where people are truly empowered to make the right decision for the context in their situation. This inversion of control is key to agility. What we're trying to do is have the decision move down closest to the data. This means that people at all levels of the organization are engaged in the management and ownership and accountability of the decisions of that organization. It is for that reason that the purpose of the organization and the understanding of what they're meant to do is critical to enable people to be empowered. This will also require energy and effort of the leadership to support people to step up and take those decisions and be accountable for their decisions. In this world where there is greater volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, we need that empowerment at all levels to enable our organizations to be more adaptive to, first of all, an increasing rate of change. Secondly, a faster rate of change. What we're seeing in the world these days is a lot of complexity and change at all levels at all times. When we create the space to educate people to take accountability for their decisions appropriate to their level, means that our organization can be as adaptive as our context demands. This ability to adapt at a very small level helps our organization pivot. It helps our organization find the spaces to innovate while managing risk and increasing effectiveness. Now, for this empowerment to work, there are a few preconditions. The model that I like to use is a blend of Simon Sinek's Start with the Why and David Marquet's model from Turn Your Ship Around. At the core of the model is the purpose, so that everybody in the organization understands the purpose of what this organization is trying to achieve. What is the business objectives and what are the technical boundaries and domain that they need to work in? If they understand that purpose, they'll understand not only what it is they're trying to do, but the manner in which they're trying to do it. In the Toyota way, this is described as the point north. If you achieve your result, but not in the right manner, it's almost failing. If we're playing soccer, we kick the ball with our feet. As soon as you pick the ball up and run with it, it's not soccer anymore. So whilst you might get the ball in the back of the net, it won't count because you haven't played by the laws of that game. So the purpose is critical to enable people to have the context that they can make the right decisions in. Once people understand the purpose, the next thing is to have clear boundaries. These boundaries are essential because this is your control mechanism and your risk management mechanism. These boundaries could be decision boundaries, financial control boundaries, reporting boundaries. These shape the area or the edges of where your people, your team members can make decisions. If that decision exceeds those boundaries, goes beyond the financial limit, touches upon an area of governance and compliance that is not in their gift to control, they can then escalate that decision to somebody where it is in their boundaries. So what you will have is this cascading layers of boundaries so that at the micro level, the individual and individual teams will have clear decision and decision control around that space. So for instance, if a software team is engineering a solution to a particular, say, financial product, they will know that there is a certain architectural boundary that they are free to move into. So if your organization has decided you're using Azure as the fundamental infrastructure platform, the choice to move to a different platform is not in their gift. That is a clear boundary. But how they actually engineer the solution within that defined space enables them the freedom to find and innovate the best solution. Now, these boundaries, once they're clear, help create and grow a space of trust. Now, this trust is not a naive trust. This trust is earned through demonstration of competence. It is earned through people being able to deliver regularly. And this trust goes both ways. So this means that the boundaries are clear, are reviewed appropriately, but they're not shifting like quicksand. One of the dangers you can have is have a boundary set, and then when you work towards that and you deliver a solution that was in the previously defined boundaries, to find those boundaries have changed causes a breakdown in trust from the team that built it to the organization without them. It is essential that we can grow trust throughout the organization because this allows for speedy communication and speedy decision making, because people will know that certain decisions will not be undone because it was within their control boundary and it was in their gift to make it. That then places the emphasis on leadership to communicate the boundaries in a clear manner, to hold people accountable for working within these boundaries, and for growing the trust between individuals in teams and between teams across the organization and up and down the organization. That means there is a duty of care on everyone in the organization to help share knowledge and grow understanding so that we can improve competency, capability, reduce single points of failure. So that's a business contingency issue. And that is evidenced in trust within your organization. The larger your organization, the more energy there will need to be in clarifying boundaries and growing trust. Very, very large, older organizations often have layers and layers of bureaucracy that makes it really challenging. I've seen this work in a financial institution where they use delegation poker, which is a technique from Management 3, to call out where the decision rights of the team, of the architects, and of the leadership was, so that controlled the technical, the business, and the team boundaries on all those aspects. And it worked really well because then that ensured that when the teams delivered something, it would fit into the architecture of the organization and be easily absorbed. Where this was not clear, I was working with a retail organization, and there was a team that spent 3 months building a set of features that once they were done to their standard could not be employed because they were targeting versions of architecture that were not in production. And so basically the organization then had to consider whether they were going to make that architectural investment to go up to those next levels of architecture, by which time the particular features that this team had built were obsolete. So purpose, being clear on the purpose of the organization, understanding the why. Boundaries, these are your critical risk management and control mechanism. And trust, having the competency and capability to communicate and execute within the boundaries. That helps us create empowered teams and an empowered organization that can innovate and respond and adapt quickly. When we have trust, we can then bring in the sixth habit, which is practicing open communication. Open communication, the opposite of that is either misinformation or partial information or political communication. What we're trying to do here is break down silos, and we're trying to drive that flow of information and learning throughout the organization. Typical barriers to this open communication are fear and concern about punishment or being the bearer of bad news. Once again, the fastest news that should travel should be bad news. So being able to share information, data freely and collectively is really key. I was at a retail organization where they had a product roadmap along the side of the cafe wall. So when people were queuing for lunch, that was one of the best melting pots of people across all levels of hierarchy. And people would look at that roadmap and have discussions around it. And so key result metrics were up there, and the adaptations to that broader product roadmap could be discussed. And that created a culture of openness so that there was no hiding of information or siloing of information. This is really important to create this space of innovation. On the flip side of that, working in a very traditional based predictive organization, people will not tell the whole story or will color the information to suit their political games. The worst I saw was where people miscommunicated about a project because their project was not going well. So the program manager said something not true about another project, so it wasn't only his projects that were failing. That is the opposite of open communication, and you can imagine what that does for trust. The seventh and final habit is to ruthlessly remove impediments. I use the word impediment advisedly. It's really important that you don't wait until you are blocked. An impediment is anything that causes friction or slows you down. This is where you need to look at, observe your boundaries and adjust them as appropriate. These should be not collated in a list, put in a log somewhere and acknowledged and curated like a museum collection. These should be put in a backlog and removed in the order of that which is causing the most pain. An impediment is costing you time, it is costing you money, and it is sapping your team's morale. If you think about it, if you're driving your car somewhere, if it starts to slow down or misbehave, you want to get it to a safe space so that it doesn't stop in the middle of the road. That's when you will have a bad accident. And that's why we shouldn't wait until they're blocked. And it becomes a culture of everybody removing impediments, starting with the individual team member working. And if we're not saying that the leadership's job is to go through and solve everyone's impediments for them. We want to create a culture where everybody removes impediments they can. And if they can't remove it, they escalate it, but they start themselves first. This is completely tied in with the concept of empowerment. You remove what you can. If you can't, you ask for help. An organization that does this will cultivate flow, and that flow will help the feedback loops work. And so this is how all of those 7 ideas tie together. But how do you measure it? I am a keen supporter of evidence-based metrics. I've been working with scrum.org and using these metrics for a number of years now. Agility, or the business value from agility, can be measured by 4 key value areas. Current value, how much is your value is your organization currently delivering? And this will be evidenced by metrics including customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and market capitalization. Unrealized value is the potential value that could be achieved in the market. So this could be evidenced by market share, by space for innovation, measuring your distance between customer perception and what your product means. The other 2 key value areas measure organizational capability. The first one, time to market, is fundamentally your flow metrics, cycle time, throughput, how quickly can you get your product to market? And ability is how much freedom and speed does your organization have in being able to innovate and bring new ideas and new products to the market. There are many metrics that you could create under that key value area, and there are some in the evidence-based management guide at scrum.org. These metrics, some are leading, some are lagging, and they should be measured regularly, at least monthly. As you measure these metrics, you are able to determine whether the steps that you are making are enabling your business to be more agile. So the 7 habits for sustainable agile transformation to make the cultural switch are: communicate the purpose, build feedback loops, use a common vocabulary, balance outcomes and output, empowerment at all levels, practice open communication, and ruthlessly remove impediments. And you will understand your success or otherwise of doing this by measuring what will give you value. So that brings me to the end of this particular topic. I understand that there's a forum for questions that's going to happen very shortly after this call. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter at Reindl. My LinkedIn profile's there. I'd really thank you for taking the time to listen to my thoughts today, and I'd welcome any thoughts or feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon, for the presentation. And I would like to ask a question about these 7 habits. Which of them organizations more often lack when they step into the agile transformation? Can you say number 1, number 2, or which one?
Without trying to sound too much like a consultant, it depends. I know that's like, everyone's like, yeah, of course you're going to say that. In my experience, it is building, it's a combination of openly sharing the information and ruthlessly removing impediments. A lot of organizations become nervous about taking away things that are causing friction. And so this is why, the reason I put them in that order, they're often very clear about the purpose. If we're clearer about the control boundaries, that creates the space to get rid of stuff. But when organizations start doing this, if they're coming from that classic predictive behavior, giving power to the teams and getting rid of bureaucratic structures seems very scary. And so it's really important that those boundaries are clear so that impediments can be removed. So it's more a vertical slice through the whole stack than one specific thing.
Yes. Thank you, Simon, once again. Thank you for participating And now we have some time for our participants to ask you questions in couloirs. So I will ask you to join another link, and thanks again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see
Bye-bye.
some of you. Thank you.
Thanks.